Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Karuta Chat. Right now, I'm here with Douglas McLean. And Douglas, this is your first time here, so can you introduce yourself?
Hey everybody, buenos dias, Peru y Latinoamérica.
Mhm.
Um, I am Doug McLean, and I host an old blog. It's been around for about 10 years about the Hyakunin Issue, and also now, thanks to people like Stephanie and others, I'm learning about Karuta as well.
Mhm. Yes, that's fantastic. I'm actually a huge fan of your website. I
Uh,
think it's the only one that I actually go when I was learning the
oh,
poems. Yeah.
thank you very much.
And yes, and thank you for, well, thanks of this tournament recently is how we finally got to meet.
Yeah,
So let's start
it's
with the
funny.
question. Yeah,
Oh,
sure.
if I may, it's
Yeah.
funny because like Steph, I met you through Karuta, but I also met a few other fans through online Karuta, and I honestly had no idea anyone was looking at the website. Like uh, I can
Mm,
see, I can see stats. So like sometimes, for example, people from like Indonesia or from Russia
yeah.
or Peru will look at the website, but I don't know anything about them. So like,
Right.
yeah, it's the first time really to meet people face to face. So, anyways, thank you.
Yes. Yes. Okay. So starting with the questions. So when did you start this passion for the Hyakunin issue? Because it didn't start with playing Karuta, right? It was way before. Okay.
Much. Yep. That's a great question. So you're right. I didn't know about Chihayafuru. I don't think it was out at the time. I think it came out a couple years later or something. But so I'm married to a Japanese lady. We are
Uh,
celebrating our 20th anniversary next month. And
Congrats.
so I've been trying to learn Japanese language for a long time. And so one of the ways to learn a language is to read a lot of um, a lot of books and stuff. And so at that time, I was looking for just something to read that was like kind of more at a kid's level because I only knew basic
Mm.
Japanese. And so I was at the local Kinokuniya bookstore. We have one up here in Seattle, and so
Mm.
I found a copy of this book, which is this is a,
Yeah.
a Japanese character, Chibi Manako-chan. It's kind of like
Okay.
the American cartoon Peanuts, like Charlie Brown, Snoopy, and such.
Mm-hmm.
And so
Yes.
there was a series of these books at the time that were introducing different subjects to kids, like the Hyakunin Issue,
Mm.
but also things like how to write essays or like Kegel, polite Japanese, things like that. And so I found this. I never heard of the Hyakunin Issue. I found it very fascinating, and so uh, just started exploring. It was just such a I'd never heard of the idea of having like a poetry collection like that with so many different authors and so
Mm-hmm.
on. So yeah, it was a whole new discovery for me. And then later, when I look for sources in English, there's very little information. It's usually very old or so on. But I found this book by Dr. Joshua Mostow, and
Yes. Mm-hmm.
this was really what made the blog happen.
Mm. Yes. Yes. That is actually quite interesting because when I wanted to learn Japanese and I went to, short stories, I remember that I never found anything about Hyakunin Issue. I went from short stories like Momotaro, and so
Oh yeah, I
yes,
did the same
such
thing.
stories.
Yeah. It's hard too because those short
Yeah.
stories like it's not everyday Japanese. It's more
Mhm.
like story or literary Japanese. And so
Mm.
like I had the same experience where like I would read those things and it was interesting, but I didn't it wasn't like Japanese I could use with my wife or my kids.
Mm. Yes. That's definitely.
Yeah.
And one thing you also said that I want to point out, like once
Sure.
that I really like about the website is that I found other websites when I was starting to learn the poems, right? And I wanted to have like an imaginary, but in the websites I only found like translations, right?
Mm,
And in your website I like it because like you did a translation, of course, but also like your comments, the stories behind it, and it was short. It was not like a heavy reading, and I really love that. So that's why. And you always put like a picture, like that represented the main idea of the poem or
Yeah,
something related to the poem. I really
yeah,
much love that.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Um, I,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
my wife will say that I'm very thorough. Like
Mm.
I like to, I like to focus on detail. So I, like when I made that stuff, it also changed a lot too. It started out shorter and thinner, but over time I've added a lot more detail. Because now I can read Japanese more easily than before, and so like
Mm.
now I have like Japanese sources that I can use. Like this is another one for kids, but it's
Mm.
like a dictionary of
Okay.
Hyakunin Isshu, and it's great because there's just an amazing amount of detail, in there. So like for example, these are a couple of the poems that you probably recognize, um, but each one is really dense with detail. So for example, let's see. So yeah, this one is so Awajishima, so on and so
Mm-hmm.
forth. But there's like all sorts of information, the translations for in modern Japanese, and then like lots of information. It talks about the birds that are represent that in poetry represent winter. This is
Mm-hmm.
something I would never find in English. So
Yeah.
there is actually a lot of information, just not in English or outside Japanese.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Okay. So can you share more about your website? And
Yeah,
expressions,
yeah.
yes.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So that was when I first discovered the Hyakunin issue. That
Hmm.
was 2010 or 2011. I can't remember.
Okay.
So I've been blogging for a long time. Um, when I um, when I first got married and was first learning about Japanese culture and stuff, I would
Hmm.
blog about that. But those blogs have they come and go. Like I start a blog for a few years, I get tired of it, make another
Ah,
one.
okay.
So they're mostly gone. But when I discovered the Hyakunin issue, I felt like this is an interesting side project. So I will not the regular blog. I did a little bit, but not the regular blog. But I kind of split off and made a second blog, which is the one you know about.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I finished all 100 poems in 2014. So 3 years later, and then I kind of ran out of material. There wasn't, I didn't have more information back then.
Mm.
I didn't know, there was no more poems to write about. So I kind of stopped for a long time. I even kind of forgot about it, which is embarrassing. Um, and then last year I got really sick with COVID. Not like seriously ill, but I definitely was like I was stuck in this room for about a week, and
Mm.
the but and I was like really bored. That was it. There's nothing to do. I can't go outside and talk to people. I was isolating.
Yeah.
So I found my old blog and I noticed that like some of the links were broken, the pictures didn't work anymore. Excuse me. And then also I had more information. So after that, I started fixing things up and making a lot more content, fixing a lot of. There were things that were inconsistent,
Mm-hmm.
um, uh, and I fixed that. Also, I discovered because I had all this time on my hands, I discovered Karuta online on YouTube. There's the Nihon Karuta Kai,
Mm.
that
Okay.
Zen Nippon Karuta Kai, or something. But I uh, watched a match on YouTube and I realized, wow, this is really interesting. And that's when it really started to get my interest. But I didn't know anyone at the time. That was later.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah, so it's sort of like the blog sort of the blog got kind of um, got neglected before, and then I sort of brought it back and then just started adding a lot more content. So
Yes. Yes, I remember reading about in your website about how you kind of have like a tradition with the cards, um, playing with your family, I believe, but I don't remember well.
yes, Bozo Mekuri, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So that's a great question. So um, learning Kyogi Karuta, that's
Mm-hmm.
what you and I play. Learning
Yeah.
Kyogi Karuta is kind of intensive. I just started, so I'm terrible at it.
Yeah, me
Actually,
too.
so for fans, Steph just destroyed me in a game earlier today. So great job, Steph. But there's a much simpler game that can be played for people who don't really know Karuta. It's actually, I can show you real fast. But let's see. So there's a game you can play called Bozu Mikuri, which means you don't have to. It's just by picture, so you don't have to learn the kimariji and such. But and it's on the website. But basically, like you take turns drawing the yomifuda, and so depending on which one you get, like sometimes you get something good, sometimes you lose cards, or so on. But it's basically just like a little quick family game, and a lot of people will play it because kids in Japan all learn Karuta a little bit, but most of them never stick with it. It's just maybe not their passion. So you know, a lot of families will have a set of Karuta cards laying around, and they don't know how to play it. What do? They play Bozu Mikuri if they're bored.
All right. Yes, I've always been interested in that. I think it was mentioned also in Chihayafuru, but I've never played it.
Oh,
And
I
yes,
wish we could play it sometime, but you have to be in person to do it. You can't play online.
yes, that's like a challenge in everything. Even in Karuta, I would like to play in person too.
Yeah.
Yes, yes. But that's for another interview.
Yeah,
Uh,
if you ever come to Seattle, the Seattle Karuta Kai, you
mhm.
know, a great group of people. Hi, Kiri, Laura, Rachel, everybody, Cameron, you know, but a great group of people. If you ever come, we'd love to have you. We could play lots of Karuta together, and
Yes.
Bozu Mekuri.
Okay. I'll have that in mind, although we don't really travel much. Not
Ah,
because we don't want, but because of other stuff.
oh yeah, no, I
All
understand.
right. Yes. Okay. So, what's your favorite story depicted in a
Ooh,
poem?
that is a great question. So, there's a lot of great stories in the Hyakunin Isshu. It has a lot of history to it, and so that was the main motivation of the blog and or the website.
Mhm.
And but my favorite story is one. It's poem 60, Oeyama, and that one, the daughter of Lady Izumi, or Izumi Shikubu in Japanese.
Mhm.
Her name was Ko Shikubu no Naishi, basically the daughter of Izumi Shikubu. She was also a talented lady, a talented poet, and but someone was trying to sort of challenge her, and you know, like because she's the daughter of a famous poet,
Mhm.
someone was questioning whether she was a good poet or not, and so you know, through poetry, she responded with this poem, Oeyama, so on and so forth. And the poem is amazing because in the poem she lists 3 different places in Tongol province, which is the province her mother was staying at. She lists 3 different places and then uses 2 different what are they called, kakekotoba, meaning like pivot words, or words that have double meaning,
Mhm.
and so on and so forth. And she did this like on the fly. Like this was like not something, she didn't like sit down and write this out. She like immediately just like came up with this response. And so like I thought like, wow, that lady's amazing. And she, you know, her mother also is one of my favorite characters, or people from the Hyakunin Isshu. So it really was like the mother daughter talent was really there.
Okay. Yeah. That poem is really, really good. I think I'm
Yeah.
going to look around on your website again about that one. Um, so, can you share with us a story behind the cards that you remember most at the moment?
Yeah. Boy, again, there's so many, but there's 2 stories that I really like in particular, or 2 people, I should say. One of them
All
I
right.
already mentioned, Lady Izumi,
Mm-hmm.
Izumi Shikubu. The other one is someone named, in the poem, is a Kanke. The poem is a Kono tabi wa nutsumo toriaizu Tamokuyama.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yes.
that person, his real name was Sugawara no Michizane. And what's interesting is that nowadays, if you go to Japan,
Mm-hmm.
Japan has 2 religions. They have Buddhism and Shinto. And in Shinto, they have lots of these kami, or spirit, it's kind of spirits, sometimes gods. It's
Mm.
very kind of vague. But Sugawara no Michizane is now sort of worshipped as a kind of kami of learning. So a lot of times people, when they're taking tests, I just took a language test a few months ago, didn't do very good. But a lot of people, when they take tests, will go to a shrine to Sugawara no Michizane, and he's now called Tenjin, or the shrine is called Tenmangu, but people worship him as a god of learning. So how did this guy from the Hyakunin Isshu, Kono Tabiwa, become a god of learning? And that's kind of an interesting story. Sorry, this is another book I have. That's a painting of Sugawara no Michizane.
Oh, yes. Can you also
but-
zoom out so we can see the title of the book?
Oh, sorry.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, this is a good book about his life and how he became or afterwards how he became a god.
Yeah.
But the story is that he was a scholar, bureaucrat, and in the days of the Hyakunin Isshu, there was a very strict rank for people, and so you don't really see that much in the Hyakunin Isshu, but you could see like everybody had a very strict rank, starting with the emperor, who was like the upper first rank, all the way down to lower 15th rank, which is like just your basic bureaucrat. And so Sugawara no Michizane was like somewhere in the middle, not a really really powerful guy, but somehow he became really close to Emperor Uda, and Emperor Uda relied on him a lot, and he would promote Sugawara no Michizane to a really high rank, much higher than normal, and this made other like powerful families jealous. And so eventually, after Uda died, they had a conspiracy to get rid of Michizane. So he lost. He was sent far away to the west of Japan, and that's where he died. But then after he died, there was a lot of disasters in the capital. For example, the guy, let's see, I remember. I think the poet Ai Mite, Fujiwara no Atsutada, that poet, he died young, and people thought it was Michizane's ghost punishing them. And so then they started this worship. So there's this connection between Michizane and also Fujiwara no Atsutada, Ai Mite. So people were very superstitious, and so they started worshiping him as a god to try and make his spirit happy, so they wouldn't be punished anymore. And so gradually this became the god of learning. So that's one story. Sorry. The other one I was going to talk about.
Way too interesting. Okay.
Yeah,
Yes,
I'm sorry.
going,
It's kind of a long story. Yeah. The other story was Lady Izumi. I'm a big fan of that lady. This is a book of her poetry. Unfortunately, apologies, this is in English, but this is a collection. Also, actually, this also has Ono no Komachi, Hana no Iro wa, so on and so forth. Poem 9. She also, her poetry in here too. But let's see. So Lady Izumi is kind of, it's kind of hard to see. This is from the Chibi Monoko-chan book.
Yes, love it.
But
looks like a manga.
It is, yeah. They had some of the characters they would focus on and make small manga stories about. So she was very famous in her time. Like there was this generation of women at that time that were all very talented writers. Lady Murasaki, Meguri Aite, also Sei Shonagon. Oh my gosh, I can't remember the name. I can't remember the poem. Lady Izumi, Akazome Emon. They're all in the Hyakunin Isshu. Unfortunately, I can't remember off the top of my head which poem is which, but they're all in there. But Lady Izumi was one of this generation, but she was famous for also just being, for some reason, men were absolutely obsessed with her. Like in particular, like Lady Murasaki, the lady who wrote Genji Monogatari, the Tales of Genji, was also very famous, but for some reason she was not very social. Maybe she was more introverted. But Lady Izumi was like the opposite. She was like this extrovert, and men would just worship her. So she was married, but she had an affair with one of the princes, the imperial princes, which was of course a big scandal, in that society. And so she got kicked out. She lost her daughter, and then the prince died. And then, which was very sad, she had this affair and then the person died. But then the prince's brother also fell in love with her, and they had an affair. And then that prince's wife was, of course, very upset. And but they didn't care. And then he died from disease. Disease, it was very common back then. And anyway, so she at that point kind of had to retire. She kind of left the capital. She married someone in the provinces, and eventually settled down. But and the good news was that she eventually reunited with her daughter, who's also in the Hyakunin Isshu. Right, the one I mentioned earlier, Oyama, was her daughter. So they got reunited. But then her daughter died soon after that from disease. So she had a lot of tragedy in her life, but also she was just writing poetry constantly. And her poetry is fascinating because it's very passionate, but also at the same time very, very like sensitive. Like she talks about her feelings at different stages of life. When she lost the prince, she writes a lot about kind of she can never let him go and things like that. So she has a very passionate style of writing, and so like in that society it was obviously very scandalous, but at the same time, like, I thought she was really cool. She was just a woman who's doing her own thing, and that was really cool. So yeah, I always found her really fascinating.
Yes. Yes. I think all the audience is going to find it fascinating. Everything about those stories. Yes. Okay.
Actually, there's a lot. If I may, sorry. For Lady Izumi, there's a lot of anime. I'm sorry, not anime. Manga about her. But it's usually focused on like young ladies, because it's just sort of like it's the genre, the forbidden love and things like that. It's something that like you see a lot in Japan. There's always like new manga series about her that come up, and again the focus is usually on young women audiences, young women readers. But yeah, it's sort of you keep seeing it. There's a fascination about her as a person.
Yes. I think it will be interesting. I think I'm going to actually write you after the interview to ask you for the links or just the titles of the books so people can also buy in if they are interested as well.
That's a great idea. Yeah.
Yes. Okay, so as the audience might realize, this is more of an interview about the poems, the history behind it, and about your journey of Karuta that is recently just starting. We're going to have another interview for that. Yes, so any other particular story you want to share?
Let me think. The other one I really like is actually poem 100, Momoshikiya.
Yeah, I love that one.
And yeah, that's a very good one. So one way to think about the Hyakunin Isshu is that if you look at poem 1, Aki no Tano, and then the last one, Momoshikiya, these are both written by emperors. Emperor Tenji writes poem 1. Emperor Juntoku writes poem 100. But the difference is about 400 years of time, and the tone of the poems are very different. The very early poems are very like positive and upbeat, whereas the poems at the very end tend to be kind of dismal, kind of sad. Especially Momoshikiya. That poem is basically about how the imperial family has basically lost power. The samurai. This is the 12th century, 13th century. So the samurai have kind of taken over the government. So it's a military government now, not a imperial bureaucracy. The emperor's still there, but he basically has no more power. So it's interesting because like he's writing about like how everything is kind of lost. So like he's talking about the palace and how it just doesn't look like it's old and faded, just like the imperial family. And so I always thought that story was really interesting. His father was Gotobain. He is poem 99, Hitomo. He was already exiled to, meaning he had to go live in a remote island, and that's basically where he died. Yeah, so there wasn't. They had tried to stop the samurai from taking over. They had failed, and so now this is just, this is kind of a goodbye in a sense.
Yeah. Oof, I wish we could have like an interview for each point of Hyakunin Issues.
Yeah.
Yes. But we're actually ending the interview, and I always have this question of your favorite poem, but I think I'm going to divide it. Like, I'm going to say, like, your favorite poem, like, because of the story behind it, and probably you already say it, but still you can share it again. Your favorite poem based on the sound, because that's different, and your favorite poem to took, to take in Karuta
Mm,
because you always get it, or
yeah,
because you
yeah.
just love to take it, even if you
That's a
don't.
yeah, yeah. So
Yeah.
let's
So
see. So
let's,
three different cards, right? Or three different poems.
yeah,
So we
like
talked about.
story, sound, and Karuta related. Yes.
Hmm.
Mm.
Well, one other poem I really like
Mm-hmm.
is I think it's poem 95, O Naku.
Oh,
That one.
okay. Okay. Mm-hmm.
So I'm a Buddhist, and that poem
Mm.
is the only really Buddhist poem in there. All the others focus on other
Interesting.
subjects, but that's the one that actually has like a Buddhist meaning. It's also written by a famous Buddhist monk named Jien, who he's part of the what do I call this? Like Tendai Buddhism in Japan, and I also like
Okay.
Tendai Buddhism, so there's a bit of a connection.
Mm.
But I like that one. Favorite poem by sound.
Yes.
Oh boy, I don't know if I've ever thought about that.
Oh.
I like. I do like the I like the classic Chihayafuru. It has a really nice sound. It also
Mm.
is one of my favorite ones to take. I'm kind of slow. I'm old. I'm slow, but I usually can take that one fairly reliably. Except today, actually, Steph did get me that one.
Mhm.
So
Yes.
again, fantastic job, Steph. You are a terrific player. Um, and but yeah, usually that's one of my usually favorite ones to take. Besides that, I would say Amatsukaze is another one that I like that one because it's unusual. The Torifuda starts with an O, which is very unusual. That's an old style spelling. They don't in
Mm.
modern Japanese you
Yes.
would never do that.
Mm-hmm.
But in old Japanese that O to start with makes it very easy to recognize and very easy to take.
Mm-hmm.
But also I like the sound of it too, Amatsukaze. So
Yes. Okay. Okay, that was really good. Okay,
yeah.
so any last words before we say goodbye to everyone?
Well, just want to say thank you all for your support. Steph, thank you so much for having me on this podcast. I've been actually like listening to your podcast lately. So and I hope other people will too. You're doing a fantastic job. And especially just want to say hi to the whole Latin American Karuta community, not just
Mhm.
Peru, but also of course like Brazil and everybody.
Yes.
I hope you guys are all doing great. And I've seen some really fantastic players online, and I'm learning a lot. So thank you very much. Muchas gracias.
Mm-hmm. Yes, de nada. Yeah, that's the main reason why I started the Karuta Chat. Yeah, mostly every content that I do is in English to, just get to everyone, to every
Yeah,
country.
yeah, yeah.
Yes.
But also, I think like what you're
Mm-hmm.
doing here is also a very very positive. Like when I started the blog 10 years ago, I didn't
Mm-hmm.
think anybody would read it. Like until
Oh,
recently, I honestly
yeah.
never met another non-Japanese person who
Mm.
even knew about the Hyakunin Isshu. So I really thought like I was kind of alone for a long time, and then I realized only recently that like yeah, people are reading the blog and stuff. So in the
Yes.
same way, like even if it feels like like is anyone like watching this or reading this or whatever, you would be surprised. Actually, a lot of people find things. So small things become like really big things later. So like with these small like Karuta Kai in the U.S. or Karuta Kai in Latin America
Mm.
or Russia or other places, they start small, but they really do, everybody's effort counts. It has a positive influence. So, it's small steps, but they're important.
Yes, I like that idea because yeah, it's a small community, but then again, I really, really, I think we have to be thankful for Chihayafuru because, for example, me, I would have never known about Hyakunin Isshu, about
Right.
about Kyogi Karuta, if not for
Right.
Chihayafuru. And Chihayafuru, I only started it because I was just looking for another anime to watch. Um, and yes, but again, it's still hard because, for example, there are many Peruvians that watch Chihayafuru,
Mm,
um, but still they don't want like to join. I don't know what to
yeah.
move to
Yeah.
join the Karuta Club or to learn the poems because still, just like in the anime Chihayafuru, for them it's just too hard. it's not worth it to learn or something like that. So yeah, we still have that, but still it's a great community.
Yeah, yeah. I have noticed that too.
Mm,
Over here, where people are interested in like Chihayafuru or maybe the poems,
mm,
but they're scared
yeah.
because that like I don't have it with me. Like I have played other card games, like games like Pokemon card game or Magic the
Mm,
Gathering. I don't know if they have these in Peru. I
yeah,
think Pokemon is
it is
starting
very
to.
known. Even in Magic the Gathering, there are many tournaments in Peru.
Oh wow, yeah. So
Yeah.
I played these earlier, so I was used to the idea of card games. But what I found was that Karuta it starts off. How to explain this? At least we call this in English a learning curve. Like the
Mm,
learning curve is much higher uh, at first for Karuta. But if you get past that, then it's the same 100 cards over and over again. So then it's just like just polishing your skills. But that first step is the hardest. So I understand how people feel, and I'm glad that there are more resources now. Like there are
mm,
like beginner cards with the Kimariji written on them.
yes.
Also, like the app, the online app is actually really good. I really love that app. um, but things like that, the resources are starting to build up. But yeah, it's helping people get through that first step. And also, um, speaking from experience, it's okay
Mhm.
to make mistakes or not remember all the Kimariji.
Yes.
It took me 3 months to learn all the Kimariji, and I finally got it. But um, it takes time. But it also like you have to believe in yourself. And like, yes, I can do this. And then
Yes.
once you do, it's so much easier.
And actually, that's really great because for me, it took me more. It took me way more time to
I
learn.
know. It really
Yeah.
depends. It really depends.
Yes. 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 All right. So this was the interview, and I'm so excited because of this. And I'm actually looking forward for the next one.
Yeah,
Hopefully
me too.
soon. Who knows? Maybe next month, or who knows what's going to happen. So I'm definitely going to also put your website in the captions, on YouTube and also on the podcast. Okay.
Wonderful.
Yes. So it
Yeah,
was great to see you, and it was great to meet you in
yeah.
well in virtual person, like not in person, but yes, and
Right.
also to play matches. And let's continue doing that.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. I always enjoy playing matches with you. So this was a great time. Thank you so much for hosting, and I'm definitely looking forward to the next one. So
Yes. Okay. So thank you very much, everyone. Again, this was Douglas McLean, and yes, goodbye, and to the next one.
thank you. Bye
Bye
bye.
bye.